So so we've got the joy math on the top, and the bottom talks about this concept that we call joy bucket. And there are verses there that you can stop and read, but they're basically verses that give a woman permission to add joy to her life. Right? There are going to be days of prosperity and there are going to be days of adversity, but enjoyment is to be commended. God gives us food, drink. He enjoys seeing us enjoy our lives. And so we're told to delight ourselves in the Lord, to really enjoy our day. Right? And there's some more of Psalm 16. We have a good inheritance. Our boundary lines fall in pleasant places. God assigns a perfect portion. So we should, by rights, given all of this truth and the fact that God is good and he loves us and he's on our side, we should be enjoying our days. So if you take a look at this series of charts, you'll see in box A in the middle that there are more allies, alliances, and activities and positive attitudes than there are trials and thorns in negative thought life. That doesn't happen very often. It certainly doesn't happen without effort. In the second box, B, we see that there's less joy than trials. And that's typically where a lot of humans live, Christians included. The thorns, tests, trials, negative thought life, they happen like weeds. They spring up without any effort. And that's typically where humans live, where they're overwhelmed with all the negative in life and are pretty low on the positives. C is what we're probably trying to shoot for, where we've got as much good in our life. Allies are people that fill you up. Alliances are groups and clubs that you lean in on and learn from and grow from and can be yourself around. Activities and positive attitudes of praise and gratitude. If we can at least bump up that activity in our life, we can at least balance out the negatives. Because of the state of the planet, the negatives easily far outweigh the positives unless we put some work into it. So in the bottom two charts, you'll see that number 1 and number 2 are actually the same size. Those are our trial buckets. But look how much bigger number 2 looks when the joy bucket is so tiny. So trials and thorns and tests will seem much bigger. They'll throw a much bigger shadow on your life if your joy bucket is empty. And so this is a reading on why God is asking you and inviting you and wanting you to make proactive choices every week to add joy to your bucket. This is something we have to work at. The tyranny of the urgent will not allow moments of joy, oases of rest, little filler-uppers. They won't allow that to happen. The to-do list, the have-to-dos, and just the constant nature of living on the planet around sinners and a broken world will fill up the trial bucket very easily. So we have to be proactive about filling our joy buckets. And it's really up to you. It's up to you to know who you are, what you like. I have found in teaching to adult women that they often have no idea. They don't know what their favorite flavor of pizza is because they've been getting the pizza flavor that their kids want their whole life. They have no idea what they do in their free time because they've been putting a lot of energy into just getting along with their husband or their neighbor or their roommate. Oftentimes, once we get past our late 20s and into our 30s, our lives are so bound by shoulds and have-tos that we have long since forgot asking ourselves, what really fills my spirit? How would I do things if I didn't have to worry about everybody else's desires. So that's going to be very individual for each woman. I've already been asking you questions about this, and you get a question about this in your small group, because ideally you'll be learning new things that might spark joy in your spirit from your small group sisters, because it's unfortunately something we don't think about and put much energy into. So I'm trying to help you change that. This whole idea of stewardship is really important. We can't just memorize a verse about being joyful and expect to be joyful. This entire class is called a workshop, because there's inner work we each need to do. We don't have a lot of small group time. I believe very strongly in small group time and learning from each other. But the true work is between you being honest with yourself and before the Lord. So here is a chart, and I'd like you to take a moment to read through it and check off in which of these areas you're doing more of the first thing than the second thing. And you can pause the video right now. And now I hope you're back after filling up that chart. If you don't have the same, if you don't have an equal sign in any of these areas, you will have stress. So this is where the Lord is saying, I can't just take stress from you. You need to make some changes. So if you spend more money than you earn, you'll get away with it for a little while, but eventually it will lead to stress. The same with all of these things. If you have too much solitude and not enough people, it can lead to stress. If you have too much rest and not enough activity. So some of these can go both ways. If you do too much refreshing and not enough labor, you're not going to be able to pay your bills, and that is stressful. So these are all areas that personally you need to admit to imbalance. I'm encouraging you to understand that these are changes that you can make in your life to become more joyful. And you probably have to make some monumental, they might be simple changes, but they might be hard changes, right? If you're spending more than you're earning, you might have to get a second job, or you might have to downsize your home, or you might have to trade in that brand new car and get a used one. If you have too much stuff and you don't have the space to store it, you are not living within your boundary lines. That means you either need to get rid of stuff so you live easily within your boundary lines, or you need to get a bigger place to put your stuff. And that might be in the case of an additional child is born and you need another bedroom. It's not always wrong to go bigger. It doesn't always mean you're hoarding in your barn, right? But you need to be realistic. Most Americans have enough space and they need to get rid of some of their stuff, right? If you have a noisy home and a noisy job, you might have to figure out some way in your car to get peace and quiet so you can fill up and think straight at some point during the day. If you do have long hours, you have young children, or you just have an unusual amount of labor for a season of life, you may need to learn to take a little nap in between shifts. So this lesson is not to excuse you from meeting your daily responsibilities, but you need to change what you can so that you are not busting at the seams and always in debt, either financially or energy-wise. What women tend to do is not sleep, not eat, not exercise at the expense of overdoing other areas. But temple care is really important. You could have a 2-hour-long Bible study, but if you haven't slept for 3 days in a row, you're not going to gain much from it. So each of these are areas that you need to take personal responsibility for. Be honest before the Lord, and then ask the Lord how you can change this. Lord, I'm alone all week long, and I do my work remotely, and by the end of the weekend, I am feeling like a non-human. Lord, how can I sprinkle social interaction, human live interaction into my week, right? Or Lord, I have way too much work to do and no time to do it. So Lord, is there a way for me to delegate some of my work? Do I make enough money to hire someone to do the work that I don't have time to do? Someone to clean my house, someone to mow my lawn. Father, you've given me a finite amount of time, and I want to live well within my boundaries, not constantly complaining about not having enough money, not having enough space, not having right? So this is an exercise, a very practical exercise, and hopefully you'll take it to heart and try to make changes. Don't live a victim of living outside of your boundaries. Don't make yourself a victim of living outside your boundaries. Determine what the boundaries are and determine what you need to change in your life to live within your boundary lines. Because having too much to do and not having enough time to do it equals stress. That's just the way it is. Each of those things that you're doing might be lovely in and of themselves, but if altogether adds up to more than one day, it's going to be stressful, right? I think a better way to put it is this: everything I want to do and everything I have to do, if all of that is more than the time needed to execute them, I will be stressed. And that, again, is an exercise that needs to happen between you and the Lord, where you really take a look at everything you want to be doing and how much time and money the Lord has allotted to you and make some changes. I absolutely adore travel. But last year I had an extra job. I took on an interim, should have been part-time job for 1 year to help out a school. And suddenly my much anticipated weekends away were absolute headaches to me. I had needed my weekends to prepare for all the teaching. Oops, sorry. Let me turn that off. I needed my weekends to prepare, and some of my trips were driving trips where I was alone, and so I would lose 6, 7, 8 hours of work time. And so the getaway, the change of scenery, which is usually very life-giving to me, ended up causing so much stress. Was not worth it. Trying to double up on my work before I would begin the drive, and then the whole time I was there, even though I was enjoying very much the change of scenery and the interaction with family members, the whole ride back was more stress, realizing that Monday was coming and I was still in the car and, wasn't quite as prepared as I wanted to be. So we need to be realistic about our limitations, and sometimes we need to say no for a season. Too busy, Bible says, can make a life unfruitful. So it's a very American Idol to stay busy, right? I don't know how to get that, but it's almost like a bragging right in our country. I'm so busy. Oh my gosh, I'm so busy. I'm so exhausted. Well, Bible says that's an unfruitful way to live. And basically what we're saying, if we're complaining about it, is I don't manage my time well. I'm not a good steward of my time and energy. I said yes when I should have said no. And I'm going to emphasize again that we can't, this is not a get out of jail free card to just stop meeting your responsibilities because you're not feeling super free. It is an invitation to look really hard at what your involvements are and how they fit with your energy levels that God gave you, with your need for sleep, which is different for each human, with your need for silence and your need for people interaction. All of these are very individual for people. Your budget, the income that God is providing, the housing prices of the area that you live will be different than someone with the same with the same income as you. So we are not to look at other people's provision of energy, time, space. We are to look at what God has given us to do, the desires He's put in our heart, and the boundary lines that He has placed around us. And we are to live well within those boundary lines. Being busy and productive is lovely. Being too busy is living like a slave. It's slavery, right? It is a form of bondage where you're on a treadmill all the time, and that's not how God's child should look, right? That's not great advertisement for the Father. Oh, being a Christian means I have to be exhausted all the time. I have to be at Bible study every night. I need to be setting up chairs every Sunday morning. It should not look like that. It should look reasonable and productive, and that's what we want a productive life to look like. Martha was distracted with all her preparations. We don't want to be a Martha. We want to be a Mary.